just started the recording. The recording will be shared with everyone who is on the invite, so you're free to look at it afterwards. We're very pleased today to be showing you some of the more advanced features of the eCivis system related to tracking funding opportunities. And I know that initially, about a year ago, when we launched this project, we did some initial training with the funding opportunity tool. The training that my colleague Stephen Smith is going to deliver today is going to cover some of that same material, but then also get into some of the more advanced features, which we think are pretty neat about the system. I do want to take a minute to ask everybody to please mute their microphones because it provides feedback on their recording, which makes it difficult to hear. So we do appreciate that. You are free, of course, to ask questions. I know Stephen's going to stop a couple times during his presentation to ask for questions, but if you have questions, you can also ask them. You can type them in the chat, or you can deal with them when we pause. And this is the first of a series of trainings that our office is going to start to be offering into some of the more deep dive type features of the eCivis system in general. So we look forward to providing that in the coming months and in the fall. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Stephen for funding opportunities.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. Just can everyone hear me? Very good.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. First off, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us at this training for the eCivis Funding Opportunity Tool. So, as Steve said, we're really excited to be able to show you, or in some cases remind you, how the Opportunity Tool makes it convenient for you to look for grants in the same system where you and your team will be managing the projects that you're already running. So I just want to take a moment to kind of go over what we will be covering and what is outside the scope of today's training. So this afternoon, we're looking at what the eCivis Funding Opportunity Tool is, your options for seeking out awards, and the breadth of information that this tool can provide you. We'll also be looking at how you can share opportunities with your team and ways to make sure that you aren't duplicating efforts. So we'll also be looking at the resources that are available to you on the eCivis landing page or the home page to help make your searches more effective. So what we will not be covering is how to actually apply for the opportunities today, nor how to set up or manage projects in the grants management system. So just as a reminder, we do have a wealth of resources on those very topics on our homepage, and the resources for state agencies. You can see that we have a wide list of references and trainings that are available to you at any time. And the link for this will also be in the slide deck, which we will be providing after the training to everyone on the list. So we will also not be discussing the additional resources tabs on the home page. I will touch on those briefly as additional resources, but I won't be going into any depth on them for the purposes of this training. Any questions before we get started? Seeing none. So why are we doing this? So as my wife, who is by far the practical one in our house, often says, it's pretty, but what does it do? So it turns out the funding opportunity tool does a lot. And this training is intended to help you get the most out of those resources as quickly as possible. So first off and foremost, the tool is a database of funding opportunities that lets you search for grants in the same platform where you can then manage them throughout their application and performance periods. eCivis, which is the one that has helped us build out this tool, has a research team that monitors both federal agency opportunities and foundation grants that are not listed in grants.gov. So you can avoid the need of having to go look through individual agency websites. And this tool allows you to build out your own search agents. These agents are preset searches that you can run with one click, and we'll be getting into those in a bit more detail further into the training. Additionally, The system allows you to track and update saved grants. So it'll give you so the system gives you a line of sight to updates that are kind of happening in real time to any grants that you or your team have saved, and informs you of recently published opportunities. So let's get started. So let's get started on how to do the search. So there's two different ways that we can get into the research tool in Grants Network. So this is our landing page. This is what you will see when you first log in. So easiest way from the lead-in page is this kind of blue teal research button. It'll take you right to it. If you are anywhere else, say you're somewhere else where you don't have that button, you can just go right up to the research tab, search for grants, and there you are. And this works from any page in the GMS. So if you're just getting started in your funding opportunity research, we can begin with just a single word or a phrase in the search by keyword box. So for this part of the training, I'm going to use the phrase food insecurity as my search term. So when I enter that in, you'll see that I end up with a list of 47 results. Now you'll notice, and I did the search, that right under search by keyword is a line of text with a little question mark right next to it. Click on that question mark, and you'll see some very helpful notes provided by eCivis. And importantly, the further you come down, you're going to see these things that they refer to as Boolean search operators. Now that's a little difficult for me to remember, so I call them connectors. And these connectors can go at any point in your search terms and can greatly change the results that you get. So for example, if I wanted to just look up food rather than food insecurity, I could just type in not, so food not insecurity, which, by the way, don't really do this because it's obviously a rather silly way to go about it, but this illustrates the point. So I'm going to now search this way. And instead of 47, I now have 510 results. So you can see that just by changing or adding a connector to a phrase, you can get a very different set of awards. So you can see these, you can use these connector words when you're not exactly sure on the phrasing, or to potentially narrow down, or in this case, expand a list of results. So now once you've clicked search, let's go back to our original here, or our original list, that you'll see that each entry has a score that shows how closely related. This is the the score. It shows you just how closely that result is to the search terms and the parameter that you put in. A score of 100 means that the system found an exact match to what you input, while lower scores mean that those results aren't as exact. That doesn't mean that they're not valuable or worth your review, though. Now, we can see who posted these grants under the agency tab. Now, let's say that we are looking only to find results and to view results that were posted by a federal agency. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a box that says Filter. Under that, we can go to the tab that says Grant Type and Agency. When we click on it, you can now see that we can select what type of entities we want to search for. In this case, we're going to click Federal and then Apply Filter. Now you can see that I'm down to 15 results. So these are now the 15 that were posted by a federal agency. Let's go back for a second to our original list. And you'll see that we have right now the first 25. By default, the system shows us results in blocks of 25. But you can change this very easily depending on how you prefer to view the information. You can see 10, 50, 100, or even all results on the same page. To do that, you can go up to the Administration tab, go to My Preferences, and right there you can see how many grants listings you want per page. So I'm just going to say all of them. And while you're here, you can also change your email preferences. Save our preferences. Apparently decided not to work for me this time, but this is how you would go about making that change. Now, if you're short on time, you can now take a quick look at a grant without having to go into a deeper dive. So you can hover your mouse cursor over the title of any grant. We'll just take the first one here. And you can see that you get a little box that gives you the agency, the office, due date, eligible applicant who is eligible to apply, if a match is required, and a brief summary of what the grant is for, all without having to actually click into the record. So this is really useful if you're kind of on the fence about researching an award, or if you're uncertain as to whether or not this applies to your agency's needs. All right, so now you've come across a funding opportunity that you really like, and you feel it's worth pursuing. Now you want to know if there are other awards that are similar to it. And here again, the tool has you covered. So we're going to go up to our top here and find the one with the 100 score, the Cigna and Cigna Foundation grant. And we're gonna select this one. Scrolling to the bottom, you see a list of different keywords that eCivis has identified as being connected to the award that we've been looking at. This gives us a very large list of words and phrases that are related to the original search. So these keywords can give you an idea of how to better refine your search, maybe direct you to wording that can yield a better result, or may point you on a different avenue of research entirely. So in this case, I've decided that I want to look more in the direction of food access. So I'm going to go to food access and click it. And now we have an entirely new search. This time I have 31 results that key off of the phrase food access. Now, just a warning here. If your original search had filters added to it, the new keyword search will not. Those filters will be removed. So you're going to get all the results that you would get from food access. You can, of course, apply the filters again, but just keep that in mind. Now there's another tab down here, related grants. So this tab will show you will show you grants that have a direct link to one that you've been searching for. So this one, for example, you'll see that this is a Part B of a program. When I go into the related grants, you'll see that Part A is right here for us to look for. This is also useful for finding previous year's iterations of a grant, or if there's, as I said, additional parts to ones that you're already looking for. Now, I imagine many of you are saying, but I already know what terms I need to search by. This is old hat. I just need to narrow down the search. Well, in that case, you're already a step ahead of me, and you can now look into additional search criteria options. So we're going to go back to our home page and into research, and you'll see that there's this bar for additional search criteria. I'm going to open this tab, and you're going to see that there's a lot of different options that we can now search by. We have a whole bunch of different filters here. But just to go through them quickly, You'll see that there are categories, and for any individual search, you can choose up to 5 of these kind of broad scope categories that eCivis has outlined, just as a way to kind of narrow down kind of at a glance what you're looking for, or to kind of narrow in what you already have in mind. There's our grant type and agency again. As we saw earlier, this is exactly the same. So I could choose ones that are specifically for, say, the Department of Education. But by clicking the Control tab, holding Control, I can then also click different ones as well. So I could look through any of those 3 or just the one. In this case, I'm just going to go back to all. Then also these criteria. Eligibility is a big one to keep in mind, especially where we are in the state government. We personally recommend that with whatever criteria you choose, you also choose the other category as well, as sometimes eligibility requirements can be a little bit unclear or a little bit nuanced. And that way, by having the other tab as well, we make sure that we don't miss anything out. You can also select by a due date. You want to look for things that are coming up in the next 6 months, or if you want to look at awards that have already passed, or for ones that have closed or will be opening in a certain year. You can also search by whether or not a match is required. And then we do recommend keeping this box, the GeoFilter box, checked, because this will tell the system, look for grants that are relevant to the state of Rhode Island, because you don't want to end up with something that only people in California can apply for. So now you have one, or hopefully more, funding opportunities that you want to save for further review. So the tool makes it easy to save grants into a project that's already in your agency's profile. So we're going to return back to our Cigna. Now you'll see that there are 3 buttons that are directly under the name of the funding opportunity. We'll get to these 2 in a bit. Right now, we're looking specifically at Save and Assign. So when you click the Save Assign tab, you'll be given an option to assign the grant to an existing project within your department, to assign the grant to a new project for those who are able to create new projects, or to save as unassigned. So I decided that I want to save this particular award to a project that I already have. So I'm just going to select department that I'm from and which project I want to add it to. Is an application required? So is this competitive? Generally, the answer is going to be yes. And we're going to list this in as under consideration. And then we can add more information as the internal grant ID, grant name, any tags, or any notes that I want to leave for myself or my team that would be reviewing it later. And we're just going to save it. Now, the next time that I go to look into that project, that grant will be there for us to review. Now, you get a similar process for those who are able to develop new projects for your team. We'll get a very similar process. We won't get into any detail on how to do that in this training, but remember that you can have a project created before you even begin searching for opportunities. So we don't recommend saving something as unassigned, because without a project, it's possible that the opportunity data will not save to a profile and will require you to end up having to look for that particular award all over again. So right now, I'm going to pause for a moment. Just put up a couple of notes that we have, a couple of, excuse me. put up a couple of reminders of things that we've already covered to this point. So I do want to point out to you that you can save a funding opportunity that has already been closed, that the due date is already passed. You can save an expired grant to one of your projects, and eCivis will track that grant as it is being reissued, and it will update you if and when a new version of that grant is open for applications. So once it's reopened, you'll receive an automated email from eCivis letting you know that the opportunity is now open again. I'm going to pause here to see if there are any questions on what we've covered so far.
Stephen, this is really good. There have been a number of questions which, between myself and your presentation, we've been able to answer. There's one question that just came in from Sue at DEM, and she's asking, can a grant be assigned to multiple projects? I think that was part of what you were just showing a minute ago there.
So yes, it can. You can choose the same one as long as it's within a project that your team has line of sight to, then yes.
Super. And I know Karen had a question, which I think I answered, but if you have a chance, or if it's easy enough for you to do, would you mind just going back to show where the syntax guide is? Because she was just asking about the different search operators.
Absolutely.
And maybe we could just show that one more time. There's, I think, a little question mark there we can show.
Sure. All right, so under search by keyword, get this little question mark, eCivis help, and eCivis very kindly wrote out some very elaborate notes onto different ways to kind of use these searches more effectively. We are going to scroll down here kind of to the bottom. Here's and they give and, or, and not as the common connector words to use. And then they give different examples. So example, bike and path would show words that have either the word bike and or the word path in it. Doesn't necessarily have to be both.
Excellent. That's really helpful. And I think that's exactly what Karen was asking about there, the different ways to manipulate the search criteria and engines. So that's always accessible for you in the system, as Stephen showed there. So great. Thank you. I think we're caught up on questions, Stephen.
Great. Okay, then. So we will now move into the search agents. So I referenced these a bit earlier in the discussion, and that the opportunity tool allows you to create what we call search agents, which are preset groups of search terms and filters that will run an exact search that you input anytime that you need it with one click. So let's say your team has hit on kind of this winning combination of conditions that gets you exactly the opportunities that your agency needs. What happens though if your research only happens every 3 to 6 months? I can barely remember what I had for breakfast, let alone something that happened 6 months ago. So rather than having to try to remember that exact search, you can save it into your profile and it's going to be right there in one click. So we're going to walk through creating a search agent. So just going to run a new search and we're going to apply the filters and conditions that we feel are relevant. So I'm just going to build one out here from scratch, and just off the top of my hat, I'm going to say I want one that looks for things related to musical theater. So I should probably go back, do that here. I'm going to go into our additional search criteria, and I think that musical theater relates to arts and culture, let's say education, and maybe libraries. And we're going to do, of course, anything that is either other or state government, and we'll go with that. So now we're just going to search, and I see that we have 46 results. So now that we're happy with our search results, we can add this to our list of search agents. So we're going to go into Create Search Agent. And now I'm prompted to give a name for this. So we're just going to call this my Showtime list. And you'll also see that there's a little box that says Send Search Agent Alert Email. You're going to want to click this box because this alerts the system to tell you that anytime that it finds any grants that have the parameters that we put here, anything that it matches to our search agent, it will let us know on the home page. We're just going to save this. And you see now that Showtime has now been added to my list of search agents. And so that anytime I want to run it, I can just go and run the search agent, and there it is. So now that we've seen how search agents work, we're going to take a look at what else the results can do for us. Each record that's found by a search agent will have up to 4 buttons next to the due date. So for this example, I'm going to be using a record that was found by one of my other search agents. We're going to go to this first one, the Occupational Safety and Health Training Project. So the first option, as you see next to the due date, are these buttons. The first one that we have is to view a previously funded application. So whenever possible, eCivis pulls applications that have been successfully funded in the prior year. So this can come in handy for an agency that has less experience with these opportunities and applications, or for someone who's not familiar with a particular type of program. And keep in mind, not all records are going to have a PFA. For those who do, this can give us a good example of what is likely to be successful. We see it in its entirety, and we don't have to leave the site. This is really good if you're looking for a starting point and seeing what might work best for your own applications or whether or not you want to continue applying for that particular award. The next button allows you to see the full NOFA file. Again, right there, without having to jump back and forth between the agency site and eCivis. Third is your save and assign grant option. This works as it did, pretty much just as it did earlier, allowing you to add this award to a project or to create a new project. It's especially useful when you weren't even considering an award. This might be an option prior to that. And then the last option is to ignore a grant. So let's take a closer look at this list. So there are 155 results right now, and it would be a significant waste of agency effort to have to review all of them every time that we ran a search agent. So instead, I've gone through the first 3 on this list, and I've decided that none of them are appropriate for what we need. So rather than duplicate effort, I can go over to the 4th button, click it, and these now will be ignored. What that means is when I go to search this list again and run the search agent, you'll see that we now only have 152. So those 3 that I decided to ignore are no longer being shown to me when I run this agent and will be excluded every time that I run it going forward. Now, should I decide later on that I made a mistake and that I want to look at those opportunities that I excluded in the first place, I can just go back to the search agent box, which now has this new 4th button next to it that says Show Ignored Grants. Do that, and I get a little notice that they were put back in. And when I run the search agent again, they've returned. Now, unfortunately, you can't really pick or choose which ones go back. This is kind of an all or nothing, but the option is there. So let's say a year from now that your agency's search needs have changed. you want to add an additional search parameter or increase the date range of your possible opportunities, you can modify an existing search agent at any time. Let's take this one, the information and training agent, and make a couple of tweaks to the search conditions. So from here, we go to our research tab. We have this. So results have come up. We're going to go into our filter, and we are going to change our categories. So I've taken a look at my category options. I have 5 right now, which remember is the maximum. And I've decided that IT telecoms just really doesn't help us here. I don't feel that it's really useful for this project. So I'm just gonna click it and get out. Close that out. I'm then also going to go into our eligibility. You say I forgot to add the other eligibility here. So I'm gonna tack that on as well. And now I'm going to close that out, and I'm going to apply the filters. Get a warning that they've changed. Yes, we did that on purpose. You see that a couple of them have now disappeared, and that when I run the search agent again next time, it's changed permanently. So I'm going to pause here again and see if anyone has any questions on search agents.
No questions in the chat, Stephen. Just I've been putting a few of the pointers that you've highlighted here, which are great, about using ignore and search agents and things like that, so people have them for the recording. So we're doing really well. Good.
Thank you. I appreciate you putting this together for us. All right, so next then, we're going to move into how the funding opportunity tool organizes the key information needed to submit an application for each grant. In other words, how to read the funding opportunities that we get. So for this part of the training, I'm going to be using a particularly robust example from my education search agent. We're going to go into the high school equivalency program, or the HEP program for FY22. Now, directly under the program name, you're going to see 6 teal light blue tabs, and each starting with a summary, which is our landing page for this opportunity. And each of these will provide you additional guidance on the requirements of the program. So for the summary, you can see key information for the grant, including the issuing agency and office, the CFDA or assistance number, the available funds if listed, and the solicitation and due dates, and whether a match is required. You'll also get an overview of the program objectives. So of note here is that you will see if the program has preferences or any conditions regarding those preferences. In this particular grant, the summary tells us a competitive preference is given to an applicant with an existing but an expiring HEP project. So this information can give you some really great insight onto how or if you want to approach this application. And you go to the eligibility. So this tab can, depending on the issuing agency, provide us a wealth of information at a quick glance. So we can see that there are further explanations as to which agencies are able to apply. In this case, for example, we would not be eligible to apply for this. And it's really, this is good for narrowing down information that, as I mentioned earlier, may be a little bit more nuanced. And these are unique conditions that can modify who is able to apply or can impose additional requirements on certain applicants. So this opportunity is especially robust, providing not only that information, but also laying exactly what is needed, what documents will need to be submitted, even going as far as formatting requirements, and even the rubric, even the scoring rubric. Now, unfortunately, I have to stress here that many, if not most, opportunities won't have this level of information available. So make sure to read the section carefully. But regardless, this will be a great place to get additional insight into what is needed. Our financial tab is where the issuer of the award lays out any match requirements or conditions. So in this example, we see that matching funds are not required. But if you do opt to use the matching funds, you are now on the hook for providing that same level of non-match funding each performance year. So this tab also expands on expected awards and any unique requirements for the applicant's funding to be accepted, including budgetary or spending requirements. In this case, for example, indirect costs are limited to 8%. Now, no points for guessing what the contact tab does. Importantly, though, contact notes section is key for knowing the unique points of contact and if different kinds of inquiries need to go to people other than the name contact. And this is where you may also find any required or guiding documents for download, and along with any explanatory notes, for those documents. So depending on the status of the opportunity, there may be additional tabs that are not necessarily going to be present in other opportunities. So in this example, we see that there have been updates and also a PFA, which would also correspond to the PFA button back in the search results list. Any questions on how to read a funding opportunity in eCivis?
So Stephen, there is one question that Karen has about if you could just show, it's actually right on the point you just made about the PFAs, the previously funded opportunity examples. Could you just show how, again, you would find that if you were doing a search from the search perspective?
All right, so sure, let's go back to the search results. Now, whether or not one has, as I mentioned earlier, not all of the awards are going to have a PFA, but if they do, you will see it very prominently in the results list. So right next to the due date, the first one you'll see is a PDF marker, and you scroll over it, view PFAs.
That's great. So you can very clearly see from your search results, Karen, if there's that PDF icon there, that there's going to be an example for you, which, yeah, it is a really neat feature. So thanks for it. Good question.
Yeah, very good question. And unfortunately, you can't sort by results that have PFAs. I wish that were possible. But again, at least on your results, you'll know immediately whether or not there is one. Okay.
Great.
Now, we're going to move into how to use eCivis resources to improve collaboration and reduce the duplication of effort. So let's say you've come across an opportunity that you think would be perfect for your agency. So you want to get a head start on reviewing it, or maybe you just don't have the bandwidth yourself at the moment. So instead of just saving it to a project for later review, you can link an opportunity to another person on your team. So that recipient can be someone else who is in the grants network system, so another grants network user, or a non-grants network user, as long as you have their email address. So we'll go back here. And our second button underneath the name is their email grant. When we click on that, it'll ask us if we want to email this to someone else who's in the grants network or someone outside of it. So for this example, I'm going to send it to myself. I would normally send it, so I could say send one to Steve, or could send it to somebody in another agency entirely. So here you can select by the department, and then by the people in that department. So for this, I'm going to send it to myself. And you'll notice a little box. It says create grants review task. You're going to want to keep this checked because this will create a task for the person that you're sending it to. so they can have immediate access to it from when they log in. So I'm going to tell myself to review it by Friday. You can always, of course, add additional notes. Just going to tell myself hi, and I will send it to, and I can then send that email. So when I go to look for it again, so when I'm in, I will see that there are grant review tasks that are now due to me in the next 3 days, or the next 7 days, excuse me. Clicking on this little highlighted number will show me all of the grants tasks that have been assigned to me. So that way, I don't lose sight of the reviews that I can work on. So what this also means, you can also do this, of course, for somebody who's not on your team or somebody who's not in the grants network. In that case, you will be prompted to enter the recipient's email, or you can choose from emails that you've entered in before. Now, what this also means, though, is that you can email these opportunities to somebody in another agency, which would be helpful if you are looking to collaborate with somebody in that agency. And just to confirm, I'm just going to check. So when I go to check my emails, I've just received a notice that I have had this program, I've had this grant routed to me. So as soon as you send that, the person that you send it to will get that automated email from eCivis. So now we know, though, that pouring through dozens and hundreds potentially of grants is a significant time commitment, which is something most of our agencies just don't have. So what's worse, than losing? So what's worse is to lose track of an opportunity that you've already reviewed, only to end up going through it again inadvertently and sinking more time into it. Another valuable option of the tool is that it recognizes that you've already saved a grant and to what projects you've already assigned them. So we're going to go back to our HEP. And here we have our third button, grant usage. So this brings up a box. And this box tells me that I've already saved it into my grants. And it also tells me to which project I have assigned it, if any. And also if there are any allocation funding sources that are now attached to this grant. So we already see now that I've already looked at this one. And this is handy if you haven't researched opportunities for a while, and it can serve as a quick reminder where you are in a project before wasting time looking at grants that you've already decided to investigate. And continuing on the topic of not duplicating effort, I'd like to point out a little tab at the bottom of each opportunity record. Remember back during the discussion of keyword searches where opportunities had a list of related keywords that can prompt additional research? So 2 tabs over from that is the Activities tab. This tab will show you other GMS users who have looked at or saved this grant that you're currently on. So in cases where, for example, only one application should be sent for a particular award, or where an agency doesn't want to step over another, this information can be very valuable. So the names of other users, in this case, it's myself, but if say Steve had already looked at this award, his name would appear. I can then directly click on that name and open up an email directly to that person. And that way, without even leaving the screen, I can get in contact and open that line of communication with that user. So maybe opening the lines with another agency on a potential mutual project. And we know that one of the biggest challenges to any agency is to make sure that the multiple project deadlines, both that are self-imposed and those that are required by the grantor, can easily fall through the cracks in the midst of constantly competing agency needs. This is why we've chosen to highlight the tools that make both research and tracking tasks more effective. So to that end, I'd like to take a moment to go over with you what you'll see on the eCivis Grants Network landing page. So when you log in, all right, unexpected. So when you log in, we're just going to take a quick look at some of the different elements that are available from the first page that you see when you log in. So we've already looked here at action items. And these are items that tell you what you have coming up within the next 7 days and what tasks you may have fallen behind on. So clearly I have a bit of work to do here. So this is an at-a-glance reminder as to what your responsibilities are within your agency's project. So if I were to click into, say, this one, little hyperlinked number, it tells you, hey, you've been assigned this review grant. It was due on the 15th. Get to it. That way I don't lose sight to the things that I otherwise should already have. Grants activities. So as we mentioned earlier, you can see if there are any updates on your saved grants. There are numbers that show updates or new fiscal years for the grants that you've already saved. And if you have any search agents that have new awards that meet those criteria, you would see them here. Now, since I've only just logged in a second ago, I'm not going to necessarily have anything, but it is very much common to have new ones, and I will show you what that looks like. So in this case, if I had one where I had 2 new search agents, I could click on that number, and then it would take me to the new list, and any one with the green asterisk next to it are new awards for that agent. There's the My Transaction Activity, which is a box that gives you the line of sight to any budget items that have been imported into eCivis that don't match the budget that's input in the grants network. So from here, you can easily generate the list of budget items and make the changes that you need to reconcile them, rather than having to hunt through each transaction individually, hoping to find the one that you need. Recently published, rather self-explanatory, shows you just the overall number of new grants and updates since you last logged in. For those who are department masters, you will see this dashboard, which gives you a view of all open projects, all due applications, all submitted grant applications, all grants where funding has been awarded, and any post-award reports that are coming due, just by clicking on the hyperlinked numbers. So these options that are all directly available from the front page of the tool can help you stay ahead of the new opportunities and help keep you on track for the grants that you're already searching and reviewing. So to close the loop, why should you care about the opportunity tool? Why use it? Part of our role as grants management is to really facilitate the integration of this system, the system that's constantly working to reduce the burdens on your agencies that are inherent to research and administration of grants. And we believe that the funding opportunity tool is a major part of that aim, making it easier to locate and track the funding sources that are necessary for really so many of our agency's goals. So throughout this training, I've hoped to highlight the advantages of utilizing this tool, it's already built specifically for the GMS that you'll be using on the go forward anyway. And so to highlight kind of a few of those points, the landing page, the GMS automatically searches for new opportunities based on your search agents, the tracking if there are unmatched transactions that allow you to sync payments on issues syncing payments into RIFANs. And you can easily jump from research to adding tasks in your project, and to build new projects or to modify them based on new opportunities that you find. And that there's a visibility to these opportunities, both in grants.gov and those curated resources that are specifically offered by the eCivis team. Their databases include awards for agency websites that aren't listed in grants.gov. With that said, I will ask one more time if there are any questions.
One question, Stephen, while people are thinking if they have any other ones, is if I set up a search agent in the GMS as you showed, is there a notification component beyond, like, do I get an email if I'm a Grants Network user if something matches my criteria, or do I have to log into the Grants Network?
That is a good question, and I will actually need to research that and get back to you with that information.
Okay.
As I have not seen if those are sent automatically or if there's something that you need to do to see them. Unless there is somebody from eCivis that is on the call that could speak to that.
We'll track down that answer and we can share that with everybody too, because that would be a neat thing too, just as I was seeing some of the cool features that this has here. Great. Yeah, there's no other questions in the chat, and I'm not hearing anything either from anyone on the call, so I think we can continue here.
Okay. Well, this is the this is kind of the end point of our training. I just wanted to get this information out to everyone. So this is how to get in contact with us at the Grants Management Office. So as I showed you earlier, the resources that are available for the management of awards and those trainings and guides that I mentioned earlier on our website. That's from this link. We've recently kind of put the finishing touches on our support form that for any user, whether it's an agency or a subrecipient or even an applicant, that can send us questions, or those who have a system issue can fill out the support form, and it will create a ticket that our team will see immediately and can address any issues that you bring to us. We do know that there are times you need some more immediate answers. So we do have our user support email, dua.grants@dua.ri.gov, as well as the phone number for our team. And you can also email me as well with any questions, and if there's any additional questions after the training, please feel free to contact me. And that's it for today's training. So I'd like to thank you for everyone for taking the time to join us today, and that we hope this training is helpful to you as your agencies continue to adopt the GMS, and this is a way to that information that we provided can give you a more sort of efficient and effective research experience.
Super. Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you everyone who attended the training. We will send out the slide deck, and the recording will automatically be sent, I believe, to all the recipients, and we had a couple others who joined in. We'll make sure that link gets forwarded to you as well. So thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much, everyone.